Okay, so we are entering 15th week. Um, it's been a pleasure to be here with all of you. Such an honor to do this for the Emerging Sciences Foundation. Um, and we've come a long way. Now the practices are on the Brilliano app, and I do really encourage you to practice them and to track yourself, to track your progress, to track sensations or experiences that you have while you're actually doing the practice. What I would really want to encourage you is that this practice is really about being embodied, about being able to totally, with peace and at ease, feel sensations in your body or subtle movements of energy flow in your body. You might feel your feet burning or your spine tingling or your hair that is, vibrating or something like that. And to be fully aware as well as accepting of what is happening, let's say in the moment, in that moment. And so in that, there's this part of the practice that really has us be embodied. And what we've done over the last 4 or 5 weeks is work with the senses, work with sight and sound and touch, as well as inner senses, what we feel, let's say in our belly, in our hearts, in our chest, but also more subtle senses of, as if we're looking at all the layers, let's say, of the skin, or going into the fascia and the muscles. And so part of this practice is really feeling embodied. And if you don't feel embodied, if you don't feel as if you can pay attention to parts of your body or your body as a whole, then what I recommend really is not going forward, not sort of like, oh, I want to keep doing the practices, actually going back and doing only the first 2 weeks, is really doing resourcing, find a resource, and titrating and pendulating, where you are titrating and pendulating different parts of your body that you might feel safer paying attention to, and including in your sphere or vessel of awareness, so that when you bring your attention to different parts of the body, you don't have an immediate constriction or hold, which is going to affect the future practices. And so you go back to week one, you go back to your resource, and that initial resource, as I've mentioned before, may be some place, some imaginary place that is outside your body, right? Maybe it's like sort of a vision of a beautiful ocean, or you're on top of the mountain, or maybe you're imagining yourself being with a spiritual figure, or being held by your mother's arms, or whatever it might be. Okay, but that's your resource, a place that you can place your attention on, that you can direct your attention to, that feels safer, that feels slightly more at peace, let's say, than maybe what your physical body feels like. And then from that place where you're directing your attention to, you titrate various aspects of your physical body from your resource to your physical body, resource, physical body. And the initial, like I said before, might be, I've done this practice with people where, it was like the only place that they felt comfortable paying attention to in their physical body was their left pinky, or right pinky or whatever. But it was like this part of their left pinky. So it was like a tiny bit of their left. And that's the only place. And that's perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be, your whole body all at once. But then you titrate, right? So you're sort of like you're adding a little bit, tiny bit, right? And I've used in the titration, me being in chemistry lab and titrating a whole, a very, very powerful acid. And that's sort of the similar thing, right? It's sort of like if you just bring in your whole body, all of a sudden your system feels like it's going to explode. And that's exactly what happens if I have a base, like a solution that's a really strong base, and I have a solution that's a really strong acid, and I bring these together really quickly, it will explode. Okay. It's the same thing that will happen energetically for us. And so what do? Well, I have a little pipette and I do one little droplet at a time. Drop, drop, bloop, drop, bloop. And I have my pH meter that's monitoring the pH of the solution. And with one drop, I don't even see it changing. So the system as a whole drops in one drop, but the pH, I didn't see a change. So the system isn't really affected by it so much. But then what happens? Well, now it's a second drop and a third drop and a fourth drop. And each time a new drop comes in, the system is able to adapt to that new drop. If it was too much, if I just opened up the lever all the way, whoosh, all right, and that can happen to us as well. And so therefore, you go back to weeks 1 and 2. You work on resourcing, you work on titrating, and you go from, let's say, your pinky to maybe you include, maybe it's just the tip of your pinky. It's 1 centimeter of your pinky. And that's perfectly fine. You pay attention to that. And then you say, okay, can I go to my right side? And no, let me just work on my left. And let me include more of my pinky. So your drop is slightly more inclusion of your pinky into your awareness to go from your pinky. And if in day 1, all you get to is your left pinky, that's perfectly fine. That's it. And you, okay, I got to my pinky. Good. Good job. All right. Next day, come back. Can you get to your pinky again? Can you get to your pinky and feel safe just focusing on your pinky, and then maybe extending it into your 4th digit or 3rd digit or 2nd digit or thumb? Can you get 2 digits at a time? Can you get your hand, just your hand? Can you get your wrist? And over time, can you get your wrist? Can you get your up to your elbow, your arm, your shoulder? And over time, you're going to titrate your whole body. Right? And then you start to notice the sensations without dissociating of your body. That might take many years. Might take many years, right? And there's no, it's not like we're like, I'm such a bad person that I can't do that. Absolutely not, right? Absolutely not. It is totally being okay with what is happening in the present moment for you, and that's part of the practice, right? And that's why we work on resourcing. Where can I direct my attention? Where's my direction being pulled to that's pulling me away from the present moment? I'm ruminating, I'm planning, I'm worrying about the future, or ruminating about the past, or what? Oh, come back to my resource. Come back to my resource. Come back to my resource. Right. And that's a training of the mind. That's a training of the mind. Okay. I feel like that's really important. And it's part of, it's part of sort of going forward, that we feel as if we really can be comfortable with the senses that arise in the present moment, because I can't predict what's going to come. But if I've practiced being okay with no resistance of what is happening in the present moment, then it's more likely that in the next moment, I'm going to be more okay with just what is. Okay. A friend of mine sent me a thing on, what do they call it? Instagram. It was a psychiatrist who was writing in the Psychiatric Times, which is a psychiatric journal. Should we be prescribing resiliency? And that was the question. And it's like, of course we should, but they don't give any recommendations of what to do. I'm like, this program is a program in expanding resiliency, right? In learning how to modulate the nervous system, learning how to increase that zone of presence, the zone of tolerance that we feel as if we can cope with, so that that vessel, we can hold all life experience, let's say, in awareness. Okay. You trust your own intuition. If you feel at any point as if there's too much, you come back to your resource. I'm not able to cope. Okay, come back. There is obviously a time where you say, I feel like I can go, even in hiking, I just can't make it that far. I'm going to turn around. I don't have enough water. I'm going to turn around. I've done this enough where I feel comfortable, where even in the discomfort, I think I can still make it. Right? I have enough in me, for instance, to push forward. I think using the analogy of physical movement or hiking or being out in nature or going for a really long walk is a very good analogy in terms of how far do I go? Where do I stop? And so a few times you could have gone farther, but you turned around. Big deal, right? What we don't want to do is we don't want to hyperactivate the system so much where it has a harder time coming back, for instance, and then panic and fear set in. So that, that's sort of, and that's where the titration, that's where learning the titration, like, okay, I'm feeling okay, and putting it all together, right, with the breath allows us to, let's say, experience more discomfort in the present moment, but knowing, let's say, that we have a possibility of getting through it, because now maybe you're doing a slow and gentle breathing program too while you're doing the titrating and the pendulation. Does that make sense? So now you're breathing, right? Even if you get to a point, like I hiked Mount Kilimanjaro once, and it was just like, you get to the top, and then you have to like circumvent to get to the real peak. And I activated all my resources at that time to want to make it to the peak, right? Knowing that I had resources. I had my friends. I had enough water. I had my breath. I had clothes that kept me warm. All those allowed me to continue going. But with any one of those that was missing, maybe I would have chosen to turn around. And as you do the practices, each practice is taught as, it's sort of like this individual practice, but ultimately it just becomes, then it just becomes a, like, oh, what's your practice? Oh, it's resting in awareness, which is what we'll do today, with the breath, with the resourcing, with the titration, if whatever comes up, comes up. And we'll get into, embryology. We'll get into cellular memory to some degree, looking at DNA, understanding that symptoms or states that have been repeated over and over and over again have created more sustainable neuronal pathways. And so therefore, understanding that as the hardware that has been built, but it was just using version, let's say 1.1 of the software, which was maybe something that happened when you were 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, where you didn't have an understanding of the software that was being used, but now we have an understanding of both the software and the hardware. And now you're able to reboot the software, which is going to make you change the hardware. So for instance, you can imagine this as, there's a field of wheat, and for 100 years, the farmer, you cut the same path. 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 You cut the same. And after a while, all you do is you just see that path. And then somebody else comes along and goes, it'd be easier to do it this way, or it'd be more healthy for the wheat if we cut it this way. What's been done for 100 years, that path is sort of, maybe you see it like the dirt is pushed down or something like that. And so the first time that you create another path, it's not going to have such an imprint on the earth. But as you do that 100 times, now and you don't go through this path, now all of a sudden, which is the path that you want to actually nurture. And so by being aware, look at this triggering process that goes down this path. It's so easy for me. Why is it so easy? Because 1,000 other repetitions have gone down that same path. So that's why it's easy, because that path is like, it's sort of like, I see this forest and here's this path that has been cut. And how long has it been cut for? Well, it's been cut for 60 years. Why? Because, I tried this and this, but nothing really sort of helped. And so this circuitry was just firing. It was repeating. And now you're saying, I'm noticing that this is repeating. Is there another path that I can actually create consciously? And so what you may notice is that you sort of come to a crossroads, literally, where you might actually feel a pull from your old patterning. Like you're feeling like it's almost like an old friend that's like, hey, come on, let's go smoke that cigarette. And you're like, oh my God, I know that path so well. And I've been with it for so long. And it's like this new friend. You're like, but it's just not good for me. Oh, but just come one more time. And you might feel this sort of pull, right? And it's literally like the energy of the neurons that are like, look, this path so well, just keep going down it. Why change? And you're saying consciously with your attention, because your attention is energy, and with your attention, you're saying, I'm wanting to redirect this. And yet it's going to feel as if you're leaving something behind, or as if you're, and you may even go look for it. One day you may have the experience where it might be like, oh, well, that was weird. I didn't notice that. Where is it? Is it still there? And you'll literally go looking for it. Like it's like a memory. And then you go, oh, I just triggered that path. I just triggered that path by trying to reactivate that memory because I was looking for it to see if it was still there. So the longer something has been repeated, the more the more honing in on that track it's made. So by understanding that, then we just say, hey, you might be a little longer. Maybe you might have to do the practice a little bit more frequently, or whatever that might be, where we're redirecting it. What are we redirecting it to? Well, consciously. What are you choosing to redirect it to? And it might just be, as difficult as this is, it might just be, okay, I'm just not choosing to attach myself or believe that anymore. Okay. What we get to is we notice that, for instance, we have been placing our attention on certain objects, right? Whether that object is a resource that we choose, an imagination of something, right? Sort of a created vision, a repetition of a word or phrase, a prayer, our breath, the sensation of the breath, a thought, an emotion. Maybe our resource is, the felt sense of an expanded heart, or what that might be. What we come to is we can place our attention on various objects. Right? You can do this and you can practice this yourself. You can place your attention, for instance, on your left hand, on your right hand. You can place your attention on, the clothes that you're wearing and feel the sensation of the clothes, or the shoes that you're wearing if you're wearing shoes and have shoes. You can place your attention on this pen, for instance, that I'm holding up, the food that you're eating, a scent that you're smelling, whatever it is. And all these are objects of our attention. They're objects that our attention goes towards, right? Sort of, it's a direction. Where am I paying attention to? I'm paying to, and it might be things in the past, it might be things in the future, whatever it is. But there's usually objects that we are paying attention to. Sometimes it's consciously, it's on purpose. Other times it's not. We're totally mindless. And, it's sort of like I'm driving down the freeway and I see this ad and then I start, fantasizing, let's say, about going to the casino and winning $1 million. But what happens is that there is everything that appears in our awareness, we can choose to pay attention to. And this is the action that I was talking about. This is an energy form of going, oh, look at that. Okay. Oh, look at that. Right. So everything that we are experiencing, we are aware of. So everything that we are experiencing, we are aware of. In this practice, what we do is we start to bring awareness to awareness itself. And what's neat about this is it's sort of like an analogy would be sort of if what we choose to pay attention to comes out of awareness, and it's sort of like a searchlight that comes out, pays attention to various objects, and you can actually direct the searchlight to wherever you want it to go, or it just goes and your attention has then gone to that place. It's sort of like asking the searchlight to turn the beam back onto itself and look at the source of the light. So it'd be like taking the beam and focusing it back onto the bulb. Right? That might be an energetic felt sense that you have. Like, okay, I'm going to I'm looking outside of me. And then maybe I close my eyes, or I keep my eyes open, and I take the beam of attention, which is coming from awareness, and either reflecting it back onto awareness itself, or what is authentic for me in my felt experience is the resting of attention back to awareness. So it almost feels as if there is an energetic pullback. It's sort of like back and down, back and down. And the search beam, this beam of attention, is just resting back on its source. And it's not really paying attention to anything in particular, but it is aware of everything. Because Everything, every experience emerges from awareness. But it's not like oh, look at that. That was such a great thought. You know what? I'm going to do that project. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's just like, it's literally, okay, like you're resting in pure awareness. You are aware of awareness itself. And as any object arises, whether it's a thought, whether it's a sensation, a sound, a touch, a smell, oh my God, I'm feeling this energetic explosion in my heart. You're just like, sweet. Oh my God, I'm feeling this constriction in my heart. There it is. And with every object that arises, you acknowledge it with loving kindness, with love. That is essentially experiencing everything that arises in the moment and resting in loving awareness of whatever comes into our sphere, our vessel, whatever you want to call it, whatever emerges from, and we experience it. Oh, feeling a vibration down my left leg. Some people just say, acknowledge it, bow to it with loving kindness, with loving awareness. And where do you reside? In pure awareness. And what happens? Objects are going to emerge, sensations, sounds, tastes. I had the coolest vision when I was in my meditation. Great. I had the darkest vision when I was in my meditation. Cool. Were you aware of it with loving awareness? I was. And what happened? Oh, I just noticed it and it sort of fluttered away like a butterfly. Oh, really? Even the coolest image? Yes, even the most darkest image? Yeah, even the most dark image. Oh, huh. And what did you do? I rested in awareness. Was it scary? No, it wasn't. Okay, so that's going to be the practice. That's going to be the practice for today. And you can see how, for instance, if you can't be with your thoughts, this might be difficult, for instance. Right? Because as soon as, let's say you have a thought and it's sort of like, oh my God, I can't have, or, I can't have that thought. Or, oh my God, I have this thought and it keeps on coming up over and over again. I need to figure it out and I need to do it. And then what happens? Your awareness gets constricted, goes to that. And now it's fully identified with that thought. And now you're just trying to figure out, okay. If something is like so important for your life, have a piece of paper next to you with like a pen and be like, okay, this just popped up. I can't forget this. I'm going to write it down, but then I'm just going to let it go. Like I don't have to like think about it over and over again. All right, I'm going to write it down. All right. Some people have called this space choiceless awareness, objectless awareness, the void, empty vessel, the plane of possibility, and absolute potentiality. All right, so just think about what many people have sort of described this space: absolute potentiality, plane of possibility, the void. Why? Right? The plane of possibility is that plane from which anything is possible. Non-judgment and objective come to mind. All right? Absolute potentiality. Have you rested in your absolute potentiality today and been aware of it? Absolute, what does that mean? Absolute. Absolutely anything is potential. Full potential, right? When we think of potential energy, it's like the lake at a dam. That water is totally still. It has absolute potential energy. Why? We open up the dam and the water starts flowing. We've taken potential energy and made it into kinetic energy, energy from movement. This is the same that's happening in our own system. We're resting in pure potential energy, pure potentiality, that plane of absolute possibility, the void, choiceless awareness, objectless awareness, where everything is possible. And here it is, resting in this potential sphere. All right. So let's go into our practice.